Hey guys, my name is Adam, and I'm an IELTS tutor in Baku, Azerbaijan. Today we're going to be looking at answer explanations for the IELTS academic reading. More specifically, we're going to be looking at the text from the IELTS 9 Cambridge book series. We're going to be looking at Test 2, Section 1. That's the text about hearing impairment in children. After reading the passage, I'll go over questions 1 to 13. If you'd like to skip straight to the question explanations, go ahead and go to about 8 minutes and 15 seconds. Lastly, if you'd like to see vocabulary from this passage and other great IELTS materials, go to bakuielts.com. Hearing impairment or other auditory function deficit in young children can have a major impact on their development of speech and communication, resulting in a detrimental effect on their ability to learn at school. This is likely to have major consequences for the individual and the population as a whole. The New Zealand Ministry of Health has found from research carried out over 2 decades that 6 to 10% of children in that country are affected by hearing loss. A preliminary study in New Zealand has shown that classroom noise presents a major concern for teachers and pupils. Modern teaching practices, the organization of desks in the classroom, poor classroom acoustics, and mechanical means of ventilation, such as air conditioning units, all contribute to the number of children unable to comprehend the teacher's voice. Education researchers Nelson and Solly have also suggested that recent trends in learning often involve collaborative interaction of multiple minds and tools as much as individual possession of information. This all amounts to heightened activity and noise levels, which have the potential to be particularly serious for children experiencing auditory function deficit. Noise in classrooms can only exacerbate their difficulty in comprehending and processing verbal communication with other children and instructions from the teacher. Children with auditory function deficit are potentially failing to learn to their maximum potential because of noise levels generated in classrooms. The effects of noise on the ability of children to learn effectively in typical classroom environments are now the subject of increasing concern. The International Institute of Noise Control Engineering, on the advice of the World Health Organization, has established an international working party, which includes New Zealand, to evaluate noise and reverberation control for schoolrooms. While the detrimental effects of noise in classroom situations are not limited to children experiencing disability, those with a disability that affects their processing of speech and verbal communication could be extremely vulnerable. The auditory function deficits in question include hearing impairment, autistic spectrum disorders, and attention deficit disorders. Autism is considered a neurological and genetic lifelong disorder that causes discrepancies in the way information is processed. This disorder is characterized by interlinking problems with social imagination, social communication, and social interaction. According to Jensen, this affects the ability to understand and relate in typical ways to people, understand events and objects in the environment, and understand or respond to sensory stimuli. Autism does not allow learning or thinking in the same ways as in children who are developing normally. Autistic spectrum disorders often result in major difficulties in comprehending verbal information and speech processing. Those experiencing these disorders often find sounds, such as crowd noise and the noise generated by machinery, painful and distressing. This is difficult to scientifically quantify, as such extrasensory stimuli vary greatly from one autistic individual to another. But a child who finds any type of noise in their classroom or learning space intrusive is likely to be adversely affected in their ability to process information. The attention deficit disorders are indicative of neurological and genetic disorders and are characterized by difficulties with sustaining attention, effort and persistence, organization skills, and disinhibition. Children experiencing these disorders find it difficult to screen out unimportant information and focus on everything in the environment rather than attending to a single activity. Background noise in the classroom becomes a major distraction, which can affect their ability to concentrate. Children experiencing auditory function deficit can often find speech and communication very difficult to isolate and process when set against high levels of background noise. These levels come from outside activities that penetrate the classroom structure, from teaching activities and other noise generated inside, which can be exacerbated by room reverberation. Strategies are needed to obtain the optimum classroom construction and perhaps a change in classroom culture and methods of teaching. In particular, the effects of noisy classrooms and activities on those experiencing disabilities in the form of auditory function deficit need thorough investigation. It is probable that many undiagnosed children exist in the education system with invisible disabilities. Their needs are less likely to be met than those of children with known disabilities. The New Zealand government has developed a New Zealand disability strategy and has embarked on a wide-ranging consultation process. The strategy recognizes that people experiencing disability face significant barriers in achieving a full quality of life in areas such as attitude, education, employment, and access to services. Objective 3 of the New Zealand Disability Strategy is to provide the best education for disabled people by improving education so that all children, youth learners, and adult learners will have equal opportunities to learn and develop within their already existing local school. For a successful education, the learning environment is vitally significant, so any effort to improve this is likely to be of great benefit to all children, but especially to those with auditory function disabilities. A number of countries are already in the process of formulating their own standards for the control and reduction of classroom noise. New Zealand will probably follow their example. The literature to date on noise in schoolrooms appears to focus on the effects on school children in general, their teachers, and the hearing impaired. Only limited attention appears to have been given to those students experiencing the other disabilities involving auditory function deficit. It is imperative that the needs of these children are taken into account in the setting of appropriate international standards to be promulgated in future. Alright, now let's move on to the questions. The first set of questions, the first 6 questions, are matching information. This is where the question gives you a piece of information, and for the answer they need you to tell them where this piece of information is located, which paragraph. An important thing to know about matching information is that the answers will not be in order. If we take a look at the answer map, you could see that the answer for number 1 will be here, number 2 will be there, number 3 there, number 4 here, number 5 there, and number 6 here. This is clearly not in order. So when you're working through matching information in the future, keep in mind not to look for the answers in order. Alright, let's start with the first question. The first piece of information that they want us to find is an account of a national policy initiative. Now, in much simpler words, this simply asks us to find information about a country making new rules or a new program. To find that answer, we're going to have to jump to paragraph H. The answer to this question is actually right in the first sentence. The New Zealand government has developed a New Zealand disability strategy and has embarked on a wide-ranging consultation process. So the New Zealand government is the national part of the information. The New Zealand disability strategy, that's the policy initiative. And the rest of the paragraph is the account. Again, account means information about. The second question asks us to find a description of a global team effort. To find the answer, we're going to have to jump to paragraph C. Right in the middle of paragraph C, we have the answer. The International Institute of Noise Control Engineering, on the advice of the World Health Organization, has established an international working party, which includes New Zealand, to evaluate noise and reverberation control for schoolrooms. The global team is the International Working Party, and the effort is in the last part. See, to evaluate noise and reverberation, that means a couple of countries are coming together to find out how to fix the noise problem. Taking a look at the third question, we're asked to find a hypothesis as to one reason behind the growth in classroom noise. Again, to put it in simple words, we're asked to find a suggestion, one suggestion, why there is more noise in the classroom. To find the answer, we're going to have to jump to paragraph B. About in the middle of the paragraph, we see education researchers Nelson and Solly have also suggested that recent trends in learning often involve collaborative interaction of multiple minds and tools as much as individual possession of information. This all amounts to heightened activity and noise levels, which have the potential to be particularly serious for children experiencing auditory function deficit. Those two long sentences were the answer. You have researchers who suggested that the way we teach today, the way we set up our classrooms today, the way we have students work with each other, is one reason, a hypothesis for one reason why there is more noise in classrooms. Question number 4 asks us to find a demand for suitable worldwide regulations. A demand means that someone is asking for it. Someone needs it. Suitable worldwide regulations means international laws to regulate, to control laws for children or for people who have hearing problems. Okay? And if we jump to paragraph I, right here, all the way in the last sentence, we see, it is imperative that the needs of these children are taken into account in the setting of appropriate international standards to be promulgated in the future. So, who demands it? Well, actually, the author himself, the writer of this passage, says it's important. The writer demands it. And the international standards is the worldwide regulation. Question number 5 asks us to find a list of medical conditions which place some children more at risk from noise than others. To find the answer for this, we're going to have to jump to paragraph D. First of all, the list of medical conditions are found all the way at the bottom. The auditory function deficit in question include, and here's the list of 3 things: hearing impairment, autistic spectrum disorders, and attention deficit disorders. And right above that, we see that those with a disability that affects their processing of speech and verbal communication, that's the 3 things that we listed, could be extremely vulnerable. Extremely vulnerable means that it could affect them more than others. Question number 6, the last question of this type, asks us to find the estimated proportion of children in New Zealand with auditory problems. The answer could be found in paragraph A, more specifically in the last sentence. The New Zealand Ministry of Health has found from research carried out over 2 decades that 6 to 10% of children in that country are affected by hearing loss. Now, the estimate proportion of children is 6 to 10% of children, and in that country refers to New Zealand, and auditory problems is hearing loss. Okay, moving on to the next set of questions. Questions 7 to 10 are short answer questions. A very useful and important thing to know about short answer questions is that they are in order. Okay, if we quickly take a look at the answer map for these questions, we will see that 7 is here, 8 is there, 9 is there, and 10 is right there. As you can see, the answers for these questions come up in order. So if you see this question type on your test, you can comfortably look for them in order. Alright, keeping in mind that our word limit is no more than 2 words and or a number, let's jump to question number 7. For what period of time has hearing loss in school children been studied in New Zealand? Well, actually, we just read the answer to this in paragraph A. Let's go back and look. The New Zealand Ministry of Health has found from research carried out over 2 decades that 6 to 10% of children in that country are affected by hearing loss. Well, carried out over 2 decades means studied over 2 decades, and that's our answer. 2 decades, which means 20 years. Question number 8 asks, in addition to machinery noise, what other type of noise can upset children with autism? The answer to this question can be found in the second paragraph of Part E. The first thing we have to find is machinery noise. And that's right there, noise generated by machinery. So let's read that sentence. Those experiencing disorders often find sounds such as crowd noise and the noise generated by machinery painful and distressing. So if generated by machinery is 1, crowd noise is our answer. Question number 9 asks, what term is used to describe the hearing problems of school children which have not been diagnosed? Jumping into paragraph G, we see that there is actually a synonym to not diagnosed, and it's undiagnosed children. Let's read that sentence. It is probable that many undiagnosed children exist in the education system with invisible disabilities. So the term is invisible disabilities. Question 10 asks, what part of the New Zealand Disability Strategy aims to give school children equal opportunity? Well, the New Zealand Disability Strategy was discussed in paragraph H, so let's take a look at it. And actually, there's a direct repetition of equal opportunity right here in the middle of the paragraph. Let's read that sentence, why don't we? Objective 3 of the New Zealand Disability Strategy is to provide the best education for disabled people by improving education so that all children, youth learners, and adult learners will have equal opportunities to learn and develop within their already existing local schools? The answer is in the first part of the sentence, Objective 3. Alright, moving on to the next question type, which is actually multiple choice, or I like to call it multiple choice, because you're asked to choose 2 of the 6 options. Okay? Questions 11 and 12, they're a combined question, so you'll have to provide 2 answers and put one answer under 11 and the second answer under 12. Asks, which 2 are mentioned by the writer of the passage? So which of these 6 are mentioned by the writer? The thing you have to know about these questions is that they're not in order, but oftentimes the answers will be very, very close to each other, and that's what we're going to see. If we take a look at paragraph B, and we read the second sentence, modern teaching practices, the organization of desks in the classroom, poor classroom acoustics, and mechanical means of ventilation such as air conditioning units all contribute to the number of children unable to comprehend the teacher's voice. Let's take a look at the options we're given. Current teaching methods. Well, that's right in the first part of the sentence. Modern teaching practices is the same thing as current teaching methods. Echoing corridors, there's nothing there. I mean, I wouldn't put the answer away yet, but let's look further. Cooling systems. Yeah, that's also there. Mechanical means of ventilation, such as air conditioning. And those are our 2. Current teaching methods and cooling systems. If you have the time, I always suggest to double check and make sure that you know for sure that the other answers aren't there. But for the sake of this explanation, the answers are A and C. Moving on to question 13. Now, this is a multiple choice question, regular multiple choice, which is usually in order. But there's only one question, so we don't really have an order to it. The question asks us to choose one of the 4 options. What is the writer's overall purpose in writing this article? Now, the IELTS is an exam that requires you to find the answer in the text. Typically, the writer's purpose is either stated in the very first paragraph or the very last paragraph. So those are always the first places I suggest you look. In our case, it's actually in the last paragraph, in the last sentence. It is imperative. Imperative means important. It is imperative that the needs of these children are taken into account in setting of appropriate international standards to be promulgated. Promulgated means spread, made popular. To be promulgated in the future. Okay, taking a look at the question, I'm not going to read the wrong choices, but the correct choice is C. To increase awareness of the situation of children with auditory problems.